Hey, this is Bill Gladwell, and welcome to episode number 19 of the Hey Look at Me podcast. This episode, I talked to comedian Dylan Mandlsohn. Dylan's rubber face and array of charismatic stand-up characters have made history by making him the first Canadian comic to be a back-to-back finalist at the prestigious San Francisco and Seattle comedy competitions. And he recently starred in his own Comedy Now special for the Comedy Network and CTV. Dylan and I talk about the comic scene in Canada, working on your material, hecklers, moving to New York City and LA, the importance of having mentors, types of audiences, and dealing with surprises from the audience. If you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher, and when you do, leave a 5-star review. I would really appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Bill Gladwell, and you can jump on my website with any questions or comments at BillGladwellLive.com. So enjoy episode 19 of the Hey Look at Me podcast. Dylan Mandlsohn, you guys know him, right? Because he was up here just before we started this. And Dylan, just where are you from?
Toronto, Canada.
Originally?
Yeah, born and raised.
How's the comedy scene in Toronto?
It's really good. I mean, you get a lot of stage time up there. It's like I think Canada's a great comedy gym, because you can work out there, and the United States knows nothing about what's going on. So you get to fail and even succeed, and when you feel ready, then you make a move to a country that offers more opportunity. So that's why it's nice to be in the States, and people are like, wow, we've never heard of you before. It's like, well, I'm not from here, and I just look like you people. I try to sound like you sometimes.
Why does the States offer more opportunity for a comedian?
Because there's star-making vehicles in this country. Right, and I find that the people in this country, when they love some like an artist, they really love them. They support them. They push for them. They make noise about them. Canada's more apathetic. It's like, oh, that was nice. Now let's go home and knit or something. You know what I mean? Like, they don't care. They forget. But I find that Americans are more passionate people than Canadians are, especially about their entertainment. I mean, you got like Toronto. We'll get the plays, like we'll get Broadway plays to come to Toronto, but they're born in Broadway. We don't have plays that are really, they start in Toronto and then, because I mean maybe, but not really. It's not too many Canadian plays. So yeah, this is a fun country to blow up in.
So you get down here often then?
As often as I can, and it doesn't hurt that your dollar's like 30 cents stronger than ours right now. It's nice to make that conversion. You can't do it the other way. It's just like, no, this is like monopoly money to us. It doesn't count.
So at what point did you decide to call yourself a comedian?
About 5 years into doing stand-up comedy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That late? When did you start?
17.
17.
I was 17 years old when I started, and it was hard for me to call myself a comedian. Like I felt like I wasn't qualified enough. Like just comedy was something I did. I didn't want anyone to say, oh, you're a comedian, because then I'd have to like prove it. And I think I sucked too much back then. Oh, well, make me laugh. I don't know how. I can't do that right now. So yeah, it was about 5 years or a little bit after that I started feeling comfortable calling myself a comedian. Yeah.
Do you tell people that you're a comedian now when you meet strangers, like on an airplane?
I do, but there's a hesitancy to it because there's an expectation, and because comedy's such a oddly subjective thing that we're like, what do you do? Like, I'm a comedian. That's so, it's almost like saying self-employed. Oh, it sounds, a lot better than being unemployed. Because that's, basically I am until I just get the next gig, Do
you get people asking you to tell them a joke still when you tell them that? Sure.
Yeah, it's a common thing. And especially when I come across the border. Like, I almost have to prove it. They say, where are you coming to the States? Well, I'm, visiting or telling jokes. Oh, you're a comedian. Well, say something funny. And I have to, and so I have jokes at the ready now for that.
What's one?
They're just there's just standard jokes that I would have just got on the internet. Like I can't be like, yeah, so I'm at the mall the other day. I can't be like that. Like, what's the deal with mall food?
They're not derogatory towards the TSA.
No, I can't say. It's a funny story though. A comedian was driving in Canada, and got pulled over by the police for speeding. And the police officer recognized the comedian and said, "Oh, you're a comedian. Oh, and tell me a joke." And the comedian said, "If I tell you a joke, will you let me off on the ticket?" And the cop said, "No." So the comedian says, "Well, two pigs are sucking each other off in an alleyway." I don't know if that was too dirty for your podcast.
I know
but
the podcast is explicit. We're good. Don't worry about it.
I was dying when I heard that. But yeah, well, there's no 14 or 16-year-olds or 18-year-olds anymore. Yeah, but that's right. It's bedtime for them. But yeah, like I'll just have appropriate kind of jokes, and then they'll if I tell them a clean joke, they'll tell me a dirty one almost every time. They'll want to well, have you heard? They lean in. They're like, cover the microphone. Let me tell you this joke. And I've usually probably heard it. So and as the comedian, I almost feel like I want to tell him a joke that he probably hasn't heard of, but I'm like, you know what? I don't want to take a chance and offend him at all. So I just like laugh along, even though I've heard it. I'm like, oh, that's it. It's very good. Okay. Please don't send me into the little room. Can I just go, please? So
I tell people, I guess what I do. I bill myself as a thought reader. And it's more descriptive, though, because when people think of mentalist, it's hard for them to put a description with that. They don't really know what it is. When you say thought reader, they kind of have a more solid something to hold on to. And so when I tell them that I'm a thought reader, that's the first thing they say too is, "Oh yeah, what am I thinking right now?" Same as you telling them a joke. And it just puts you on the spot. And
what I think is really interesting about his act is that there's like a juxtaposition of how friendly you are and how likable you are as an entertainer and how freakish it is to watch you do what you do. Don't you find that? It's like, he's really likable, but oh my god, like I'm scared shitless right now. Like I can't. Like if he dressed himself up like the Undertaker and did it, wouldn't you not just be like, okay, like just I can only stand half of this show. Like it's too much. You know what I mean? But he's such a nice, and he calms everybody down. He's got the nice little music in the background, and then in the meantime, you're just mind blown when he gets the stuff. I'm just like, it's a funny,
It wasn't always like that. Well, I had the #1 show in Gatlinburg for several years, and actually that's where I met Ian. Ian was at my show.
I've seen him in Lima. I've seen him in St. John's and Delphus.
All over the place.
I'm trying to figure out how he does this.
So when I was there, it was a little bit different because I had a more serious show, and if you ever see other mentalists around, they're way serious, and it's what I modeled myself out of. It's like going to a college lecture, and they're talking about memory and stuff like this, and then there's like something amazing that happens every now and then. And when I moved the show down here, I didn't want that anymore. I wanted to be more of myself, but also have people laughing throughout the show. And it puts people at ease, so it doesn't freak them out all the way during the show because you didn't get any applause or anything when I did it seriously because people were scared. A lot of people were scared. And if you've ever been to Gatlinburg, Gatlinburg is the belt buckle of the Bible Belt. And so people thought it was the work of the devil. And I made that joke because I knew that's what they thought. So they would walk out of the theater in Gatlinburg. They said, "How do you do that?" It's Satan. That's what I would do. But I was a stage comedy hypnotist for 20 years before that. And when I would tell people that I was a hypnotist, it was always good with girls when I was single because they would say, "Do me." Which is not what you want to hear, right?
Yeah. I'm going to start telling girls I'm a hypnotist now. Do me. All right. Oh, you want me to hypnotize you? Sorry.
So were you the class clown or anything?
I was. I was a class clown, but I wasn't like, I wasn't annoying to the teacher. Like I wanted to make the teacher laugh. Because I always thought if I can make the teacher laugh, then I know I've got something. If I just, making students laugh was easy. But if I can make the one person in the room laugh that's not supposed to crack up at all, that was the best. I remember the first time when I made a teacher laugh, I was shocked at myself. I was like, whoa, I actually made the teacher laugh. That's amazing. And then
you were one step closer to dating that teacher, too.
I was one step to it, yeah.
Making her laugh.
Yeah, now it's Mr. Greenberg. But and you're right, I was one step closer to dating him, but it never worked out. So thank God. Yeah, but yeah, but I love comedy. I do. I think to me it's like a superpower. And maybe I just say that because it's the only thing I can really do. But it's like because I always thought growing up, like, wow, like I can make people laugh. Like it just felt cool, like I could do that. I thought it would be sexy to girls, but it's not. It's just nice. Maybe today it's a little different, but at the time when I was a little kid, 17 to, like 25, 28-ish, up to that range, like it was just, I was too nervous, I was too shy, so I never knew how to really take it past well, you're really funny, and I would just sabotage it by being too shy or insecure and stuff like that. But up into that, I thought comedy, and still today, it's a great, really fun kind of superhero power.
You started at 17, you said?
Yeah.
Now, professionally, you got paid at 17?
No, I started amateur nights at 17. I started getting paid, my first one was at 19, $25 to do a set. And I was thrilled. Someone actually wanted to give me money to do something I'd been doing for free for 3 years. And they said, well, here's, some gas money, maybe some food for the night. I was like over the moon that I was getting anything. It could have been $15, $10, but it was $25, and to me that was amazing.
Well, how long ago was that? I don't know how old you are now.
I'm 34.
Okay,
and,
so
19, so
15,
yeah,
a little over 15 years ago.
So, yeah, so I've been getting paid to do comedy for 15 years, but I didn't really, that sounds like, he's been getting paid. Like it was $25 for a long time.
Yeah, we paid him $65.
Didn't graduate to any real money.
Yeah, we're paying $65 for 4 days that you're here, so
it's moved up.
It's moved up.
It's really, you got to work hard, kids.
I've had those gigs. You said amateur night. Is that the same as an open mic?
Open
night?
mic, yeah. Open micing, amateur night, however you.
Does that differ in Canada than it does in the U.S.?
Yeah, because open mics generally refer to any kind of talent can be shown on stage. If for an open mic, this guy will do comedy, or this one will do guitaring or poetry. Amateur night was like, this is stand-up comedy. These comics are up and coming. They're not getting paid. I'll still do an amateur night and an open mic. I love doing them, and I just work out brand new stuff, stuff that is not ready for, bigger shows. And that's going to the gym.
Yeah, I can't remember who was telling me, but somebody said Louis C.K. Came in and on an amateur night, and he bought out the room basically, but what he did was he bought everybody food and drinks, and he just wanted to go over a new set he was putting together. So it's a great place to practice.
Sure.
Even the people that are huge still need that time to practice.
It's ice time. Comedy is one of those things that you don't stay good at. You have to keep practicing it. I guess it can be a little bit like riding a bike, but no, it loses something without the practice.
No, it does. I can't. If I take a 2-week vacation, for example, when I get back on stage, I'm a little rusty after 2 weeks because I need to do it every week. And I saw Tom Arnold, for example. I had high hopes for Tom Arnold. You guys know who he is, right? And his stand-up and his opening act was better than he was. Although I liked his act, but his opening act was better. And he had some good material, and then some of it wasn't so good. But I think it was more in his delivery. But he is just not on stage like a working comic is all the time.
Yeah, I don't think he practices a lot. And I think also, too, being in Los Angeles is not a great place to practice stage time because there's too many comedians and the quality of stage time isn't great. This room is great. Like, you guys are honest. You're people that have paid to come in. You're not industry type. You're not people that have seen too much comedy to the point where you're jaded. And at this point, I've heard that. Sounds like I've heard that before. You're an honest crowd. So I know that if something is working or not working, it's because it's honest. I have to go back to the drawing board. But if I'm in LA and it's really just a bunch of comedians in the room waiting for their turn and very little audience, I can't really tell whether this is going well or not. And it's just a bunch of bitter people at the back of the room going, "When's it my turn? This guy's going over his time." You know what I mean? So.
And you guys were nice tonight. I wasn't kidding when I was up on stage before Dylan, and I said that we've had hecklers. They both were women the last 2 nights, and they were. Yeah. We don't have hecklers usually in here, but there was one other comedian that had a heckler, and it was a woman, and then there were 2 women Wednesday night and 1 Thursday night, and it was crazy. And when I've been to tons of comedy clubs, and it has always been either a group of women like a bachelorette party, or it's been a guy. But I'd never seen just one woman like here and there.
Yeah.
You had, maybe they're fans. They were trying to get your attention.
She wasn't a fan. No. She was just... No, she was so drunk. Just sitting over there, and she just wouldn't shut up. There was nothing I could say to stop her. She was just, it just kept bubbling up every thought. She had no filter. And she would yell something out right about before I hit a punchline. Like it was like a real wind up. I'm about to pitch, and then I slip and fall. Like that's what it was like, and then no pitch happened. And yeah.
Then she just told you to shut up.
And then she would tell me to shut up. And be like, well, the show's not going to go great if I listen to you right now. Works a lot better if you shut up.
So you've handled those well, and I know the rules. There's sort of rules, I guess, you have to follow in order to deal with a heckler when you're on stage. Being the manager of the club out here, I didn't have to deal with any really bad. The one that we had Wednesday night should have been not let back in. But I hadn't had to deal with any of that. I've only dealt with it on stage. And you have to get the audience on your side. Otherwise, everybody will turn against you. And how do you know when that change has taken place?
I have techniques that I use to make sure that the audience is on my side. I know that if I feed a drunk heckler enough rope, they'll hang themselves. I was so funny. I was telling the story. I was in Tahoe, and I was wearing a gray sweater, and this heckler walked in, sat down, and went, "Hey, look, it's Mr. Rogers." Like he was laughing that loud. So I thought he was just a plant. Like I thought someone else had brought him in to just get a rise out of me, but he was really doing that. And when I realized that, and the audience was hating him, I knew that if I went after him too soon, the audience would have been like, "Hey, now you're the bully," So I had to kind of, I had to make him look, like he was out of line, and I just said, "Are you angry? Did I upset you or anything, man?" And he's like, "No, just think you look like Mr. Rogers," and that's when the audience is like, "Well, that's not very nice." Right? And then as soon as I start doing that and planting that seed in the audience's head, then I can go after him. And I said he was with a beautiful girl, and I said, "Look at the girl. You're with this guy? Like, why is it that such beautiful girls go for such douchebags? Why is that? You've seen this guy naked? Were you not confused? I mean, how such a tiny dick is attached to such a big one? You know what I mean? So by the time I had gotten to that point, if I said that right out of the gate, I would have looked like I was bullying. But I had to make it look like I was the victim. And there are some techniques to do that. Because my mind wants to go right. I want to go for the jugular right away, but I know I can't. So I wait back, and I just let him come at me a little bit more. And it's just by asking him questions. And then he kept, and then if I feel that I'm going too hard, I'll just give him some more rope. I'll be like, "Well, you look like a big guy, like you take care of yourself. You go to the gym?" And he said, "No." I said, "So that's not muscle fat, that's ice cream fat." And it's fun. It's like verbal jujitsu. You know what I mean? He comes at me, and I'm like, "Oh, we're going this way. I don't know." It's fun.
And Wednesday night, there was a clear line. There was a clear point that the audience turned on the lady that was back here.
Yeah, they hated
because the whole room erupted in applause when you said something to her.
And she said, was it? Do you remember what it was?
I don't remember what she said.
I think she said, I don't know. I said something that triggered her to say, "Yeah, they need to shut the fuck up." That's what she said out loud, the whole room. And I said, "Wow, I was thinking the exact same thing."
That's what it was.
To her. And the whole audience applauded.
That's what it was.
And I said, "But you said it way more classy."
And the rules here, we keep the content PG-17 in the club and no F-bombs. But I never thought to instruct the audiences not to.
I know, like, I'm mindful enough. I know that there's like younger people here with their kids, so I try to keep it. It's PG, right? I'm not going
PG-17. No,
PG-17?
your stuff, you're good.
Okay,
you're
good, because you never
good.
know, right? Yeah, like there's sex does come up, you know. And I
no, your content is actually more PG-13. I would rate it, but the club itself is PG-17.
Okay,
so
well, that's
fine.
good to know.
Yeah,
you know, because you'd never know. I've done Disney Cruise, and I'll tell you that was a very challenging experience, because that's like doing comedy in church. Everyone in the audience, before they laugh, will go, "Would Jesus laugh at that? I don't know if I'm allowed to. Let's read the Bible." Like, it's really like, I got off stage and one of the cruise directors came up to me and he said, "Well, listen, you know, you were really funny, but you did say Jesus 4 times." They were counting how many times I said Jesus. So and you wouldn't have even heard me say it. I would have talked to someone in the audience. I'd say, "What do you do?" And he's like, "Oh, you know, I'm an ex-pro football player and now I'm going to count." I'm like, "Oh, Jesus, that's amazing." You wouldn't even heard me say it. So I had to start conditioning my mind to go, my goodness. And really water everything down. And it's just a very bizarre thing. I tried hitting on Ariel and she wouldn't break character.
Oh, they get in trouble for that.
They do.
Yeah.
I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" She's like, "Swimmingly." And I'm like, "No, you don't have to do that. I'm the comedian."
Well, it
you know?
depends. Was she on the job or off the job?
She was on the job, but
Okay.
there was no one around. I tried to talk to her like a person. I'm like, "No, you don't have to do the character. I'm a comedian." And she was like just trying to connect with me like through her eyes. You know, she's like, "Listen, you can't talk to me like that. Like they're going to throw me off the ship. I'm not a real fish." You know what I mean? Like, it's very weird.
Did she lean over and whisper, "The walls have eyes"?
Yeah. She just ended up walking away. "Well, it was really nice meeting you. I'm going to go blah, blah, blah." And she just walked away. And I'm just like, I hate it here. I hate it.
You're on a boat. You can't get off.
You can't get off. I'm telling you, cruise ships are very luxurious prisons. That's all it is. I'm in my hotel room trying not to turn into The Shining. I gotta get out. Like, oh, God.
So if somebody's new coming up through the business, they're going to run into hecklers.
Yeah.
How do they learn to handle them?
By practice, really. When I first started out, I wouldn't acknowledge it. I was so scared. If it happened, and even if it was so blatant, such an elephant in the room, I would still do my act, just keep going, and it would ruin it, because everyone was like, "That just happened. He's clearly scared of this and doesn't want to handle it." Now, they would still look at the heckler and be like, "Hey, you need to be quiet." Like, they would handle the heckler for me, but it was awkward, and there was tension in the room. But it's practice. It's also like writing off stage lines to come up with. Like, there's a lot of stock lines that a lot of comedians use. Like, I think one of the oldest ones is, "Hey, I don't come to your work and bother you while you're cleaning fish," you know, or something like that. You know, you make up some job that's terrible to do. Like, they're that stock lines. But today, I don't really use them unless I have to, you know. If people are talking too loud, that stock line, "Hey, where'd you guys learn to whisper in a helicopter?" That's a stock line that most comedians have in their arsenal in case they just need it right away. But I would write heckler lines in case I needed them, so I'd have my own. And that's another way of, or, you know, part of the arsenal of dealing with heckling, because it happens. And I think it's important for comedians to know how to do it, because if they, you know, you get off the tracks, you got to know how to get back on. And a heckler can, you know, be a difficult piece of the show if that happens. And I think, you know, it's just part of being an all-around comedy ninja, I think.
My hecklers are a little different. They don't get belligerent. I don't have drunk people too much at the show because it's a different kind of show. And in comedy, I go to comedy clubs and drink. So it's known for that. Yeah. But I had a heckler in the front row at my show in Gatlinburg, and he was sitting on this side on the end of the row. And he kept yelling out stuff. And I made the same stock things, like, you know, this isn't a college lecture, and it's really cute that you thought it was, but we can ask questions afterwards, you know, to try to shut him down. And he just wanted to be a part of the show. And so I said, fine. I said, I'll make you part of the show. I verbalized that to him. And I said, there's no way I could know you, right? And he said, no, not at all. He goes, I didn't talk to you beforehand or during the show except for our banter here. And he said, no. And I said, I want you to think of your name. don't say anything out loud. Just think of your name, and nobody's with. Tell me. And I did, and I thought for a moment. And I looked at him and said, "Dick, you're a dick, right?" That's what I said. That's what I did. It was beautiful, and he didn't say anything for the rest of the show.
That's brilliant. That's a great misdirection for you. That's wonderful. Oh my God.
What is I mean, it worked. It worked well. So that's great,
and you can have that. You have that now. Like that's,
yes.
Sometimes you can create something in the moment, and then you go, "Wow, I just created something I can keep." I've created something that he can do that every time he gets.
But I haven't had it. I liked it. I haven't had a chance to use it since then.
I know. And then you want to use it. You're like, oh my God, I love that. Yeah.
So, what was your worst gig?
Oh man, there hasn't been a worse. There's been worsts. It's just I've been doing comedy for 18 years now. There's been I did a gig in Caseville, Michigan, and it took me 8 hours to get there, 8-hour drive, and it was on a 1-lane highway in a motel room. The sun was blaring into this. If you want, it wasn't even a comedy club. It was like a conference room, and sun coming in from the window is death to comedy. Comedy has to be in a dark room like this, spotlight on, everyone's facing. And the audience was just like very, very senior citizens with their, 4-year-old granddaughters and grandsons. That was the audience. And I was probably, I think I was around 21 at the time. I did not have the material for this kind of an audience. I had a bunch of dick jokes that were not going to go well. And I wasn't headlining. I was middling. And I remember the headliner, I can't remember his name, but he was from West Virginia. And he had a thick accent. And I said, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here, man. I'm not going to get through this. They're going to hate me. And he said, all you got to do, don't worry about being funny. Just don't piss anyone off. That's it. And I'm like, I can't promise you that I'm not going to do that. And I went on stage and I just, like, what we call just gear shifted the whole way. It was just nothing but turbulence. And I tried to be as clean as I possibly could. But, I got to the end of the set and no one complained about it. No one really laughed, but no one complained. And I thought, that's a win. That's a victory. I got through it. And that was just one of the, to drive so long, and it's for $150 to drive 8 hours for $150. It was just brutal. It was like, this is not going to make me a better comedian at all. To me, I thought this was, I don't know what this was, because it wasn't like, these are not comedy goers. This is like, if I ever become to the, a level of fame, this is not my demographic. I don't need to get good in front of 4-year-olds and 98-year-olds. I don't need to do that. So I just thought, this is such a waste of time, and it was such a long drive home.
Stage time.
It was just stage time, but it wasn't like I couldn't even work out anything new. The bright side is that doing those gigs today, I would tell someone up and coming that they do make a person stronger, because and I was on the road with a mentor of mine. His name is Daryl Lennox, and he's incredible, really amazing comedian. And what he would do is he would headline, and he was teaching me, and he said, okay, your best bits are this, 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 and this. You're not allowed to do them tonight. Now go kill. And so that was a way to really get strong. And or I'd have to open with my closing bit and close with my opening bit. You know what I mean? And really try to mix things up and just put myself to the test. And then he'd say, and you have to write something brand new today and try it out on stage. So it would really keep me focused. And it was really scary, and it was really intense, because we were traveling through the States in nice clubs, really legitimate comedy clubs in Milwaukee, Florida, South Carolina, Kentucky. And these were clubs that, paid comedians really decent money, if you got the job. Now I was just up and coming still. I wasn't ready for that. But I felt the pressure of having to, because I wanted to connect and network and look like I was good enough so I could come back. And so it was really difficult to follow those instructions, but I did, because I saw the bigger picture. involved. I just wish we did that in Canada because I bombed a lot. You know.
I have a lot of comics that come through here that say it's imperative that you either move to LA or New York in order to further your career. There's a point where you have to do that. Do you buy into that or not?
I think it's important to network. To move there, that's a judgment call. To go there to meet people and shake hands, you ever hear a war strategy called guerrilla warfare?
Yeah.
You ever hear that? Called hit and run. You go in there, you splash, and you run. I think that living there can make a person stagnant. You know, if I'm going to Los Angeles for a month or less, I know I've got work to do because I've got a timeline. And if I don't get all the work done, I'm done and I gotta leave. But if I'm gonna live there, I go, well, I don't need to go to the Improv tonight or the Laugh Factory. I'll go tomorrow night. I've got plenty of time. And I see a lot of my friends, like they're in LA and New York, and they're working very hard, and they seem to have, like a good go of it. So is it imperative? I don't know. I mean, you can send so many things online today, but I do think meeting people is imperative. And those people are in LA and New York. But living there, paying rent there, I don't know. I don't know if that's imperative. But networking certainly is. So how one chooses to do that, I think, is more in the world of creativity than a must live there. That's how I feel about it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
On your website, you have, I don't know the exact numbers, like 75 faces, voices, and characters. Or it was some number.
Yeah.
It was a large number, but it was a 2-digit larger number, and I can't remember what it was. So
I used to do a lot of voices when I first started. I did a lot of characters. It wasn't really even stand-up. It was just, I was 17 years old. I was doing Johnny Carson impressions. I loved impressions. I still love impressions. But I wanted to kind of veer it more to what I wanted to talk about. Because I was frustrated as a kid. I was shy. I felt like I was a good kid, and I had a sense of entitlement. And my whole thing was, why not me? And you can't really talk about that if you're just doing Jack Nicholson impressions and strange characters on Jerry Springer and stuff like that. And that's what I started with. And it was cute, and it was a bit of a novelty because you have like some, like a baby on stage, going, oh, did you people hear the notion? Just doing Johnny Carson. This is absolutely wild. And so people liked it, but I don't think it was going to evolve, into a place where now I can't do Johnny Carson impressions for most audiences, I'm surprised that those kids knew who Mad Magazine was. Right? That was right.
Do you do voice work?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
I do voice work. I have a voiceover agent, and it's fun. I mean, I love it. I love show business, but it is the worst business on the planet.
Why do you say that?
Because it's for, I guess, a lot of reasons. There's it's a lot of reaching around in the dark to find success. There's no path. Any book that you read, I mean, I say read them all, but there's no real way of doing it. It's a lot of hustle and hard work and networking and writing and producing products for people, and you can be great and never get discovered. And you can be mediocre and get discovered, or you can get discovered, be great, and still not be able to maintain it. There's a lot of pressure. It's a very delicate balance. It's like even when you become successful, then people want to see you fail. Like it's weird like that. But I love the adrenaline rush of it. It's a lot of fun. It's fun making money at it too, because it's kind of like I feel like I'm kind of getting away with something. Is this real work? I don't know. But it's not like real estate is a really tough business, but when you get paid, it's huge. Like my dad's a real estate agent. That's why I use that as an example, because I could never do that. But the money's really sexy. In comedy, you got to work a long time and then even get lucky to make any kind of money at it. So it's a passion-driven thing. Not like I've got a business plan. In 5 years, this is what's going to happen, and then in 10 years, this is what's going to happen. You can't call that in comedy. You can have goals and you can try your best at it, but there's a lot of luck involved too.
I think it was Dean Napolitano, a comic that we had here. Each year he has a birthday. He has new people that he looks up to. Like he said, Rodney Dangerfield didn't make it till he's like 55, So,
so just keep looking. How old is Charlie Chaplin when he? Victor Borga, is he still doing it? He's right? Yeah. It's I think it's important to have mentors. I do follow business guidelines in creating success in this business. I think having a mentor is one of those important things.
Who were your influences when you first got started?
Jim Carrey was a big one. I've definitely adopted a lot of his stuff. But today my library is so big. Bill Maher, Patrice O'Neill, who's passed on, Bill Burr and Louis C.K. I love watching those guys. I love watching a lot of comedians that people don't necessarily know. They're Canadian based. There's Sean Collins and Tom Stade, Jason Rouse. They're excellent. Daryl Lennox, another one. Just really, really great comedians that, they just know what they're doing with audiences. They're very, very funny guys. So I looked up to a lot of those guys and was very influenced. They're smart guys. Their humor is very intelligent and or sometimes just shockingly filthy. But there even is an intelligence to that, like to like a creativity and imagination to it. So I love it.
So you guys have any questions as we go along?
Where was your first paying gig?
In Windsor, Ontario. My first paid gig was in Windsor, Ontario by a comedian and a club owner by the name of Leo Dufour. And Leo Dufour was one of the guys that kind of took me under his wing. And when I was 19, he said, I need someone like you to come in and make my audiences laugh. And he probably said that because I was really cheap. And no, but I was good. Like my 5 minutes was entertaining, right? With my Barney the dinosaur impressions and whatever, like I wasn't.
You haven't done that yet.
No. That's 15 years ago. I'm like, hi kids, let's sing a song. What's that? Throwback Thursday, yeah, just the old bits. Wow.
Biggest hecklers in the States or in Canada?
My biggest hecklers so far, I think, were, in Canada, but boy, Wednesday gave me a run for the money.
You handled it well, but it did. It really
yeah, I tend to handle, one of the rules of handling hecklers is never show real anger because it just, it destroys the show. Real anger from a comedian. Anger about a topic like, politics or, lineups at the bank. That kind of anger is okay. But to point a finger out at someone and says, hey, you, shut up. Like it really shuts down a show. So you can't show anger. When you put down a heckler, two things need to happen. A, you need to get a laugh. And B, you need to send the message to shut up. So those two things have to happen simultaneously. Without encouraging them, right? Like the stock line, hey, where'd you learn to whisper in a helicopter? Gets a laugh and sends the message, be quiet. Right? Sometimes, so those are perfect type lines to use, but you don't always get that. Sometimes you just get it's put down, but it doesn't really tell them to be quiet, so then they come at you. Sometimes it can tell them to be quiet, and they still come back at you. But like Wednesday.
I was in Dangerfield's comedy club in New York City, and it was me and one other person in the room. And they still made the comic come up and do a show. So, what's the smallest audience you've performed for?
2.
Was that you?
2 people in a comedy club. And, God, it was strange. But I was such a stage junkie back then. Like, I wanted to perform anywhere, and I did. I love challenging myself. I was in a bar, and there was a band there. It wasn't supposed to be comedy. And when they went on a break, I said, do you guys mind if I just, try to tell some jokes? And they're like, sure, go ahead. And everyone's just talking because it's on the break, and I'm just talking on a microphone, trying to get everybody's attention, and bombing like crazy. No one's paying attention to me. And one girl just goes, "What do you think? You're a comedian?" I'm like, "Not tonight, lady, but hopefully soon." Yeah, because I would walk into a room and just try to think of how to get an audience, walk into any room, not even just a comedy. I would be in like in a hip hop nightclub, mainly black people in there, and I would just go, how would I get this room if I wanted to? You know, if they handed me a microphone and said, okay, go, make them laugh. And I'd be like, well, I feel like Garth Brooks at the Soul Train Awards, you know what I mean? Or something, right? Something to get them that would, challenge me and just try to get funnier.
There's some comedians that I hear, not just in the podcast, but out and about meeting them, that they blame the audience if they have a bad night. And then other comedians never blame the audience because they feel it's up to them to make the connection. So where do you fall in that spectrum?
Here's how I feel it. Imagine your job, you got paid to take out people on first dates. It was your job. Take them out on a first date. And you did that for years. You're fairly good at it, right? Like you're a very good conversationalist. You know how to be engaging. You know what people are looking for. And you know that for the most part, you're a good first date. Because you've had a lot of practice at it. Now, occasionally, in your job, you're not at your best, right? But for the most part, you're pretty good. So for the most part, I think I'm pretty good at what I do. So I'll blame an audience because I do feel like, but I don't yell at an audience. I don't bully them. And like what I did tonight, I said, like, if I notice the energy is low and I notice that you're not where I want you to be, I'll just kind of like tease an audience, like, and I'll do that like professor character. Hi, everybody. We're here to study about the sea mammal or whatever, and I'll make something up, and I'll just go, that's the energy, you guys. Can you feel that? And it's kind of a light, fun way, and it sort of breaks some tension in the room. Did you guys feel looser when I did that?
Yeah.
Yeah? Did that help at all? A little bit, maybe? I mean, I don't, not that I'm calling you guys a bad audience, of course, but there's just tricks to do. I have seen audiences, comedians go, like, what's wrong with you people? Why did you even come out? Or, and they blame them as opposed to just make something funny about it and then bring them up. So, like, if I'm a guy that's amazing at taking out, girls on first dates, she can just be kind of cold. Maybe she doesn't really want to be there. Maybe she was forced to be there that night. And I'm like, this is you. I'm really good. I am engaging. I know that I am. I know that I'm charming. I know that I know what I'm doing. I've been paid for a long time to take girls out on first dates. This isn't me. So I'm not like stuck up about it. If I do, I audio every single one of my sets on my phone, including tonight's, and I'll listen to it. And I'll go, this is what I like. This is what I didn't like. So I'm always kind of working. It's not a stuck up thing. It's just, I know when it's me. Or at least I'm humble enough to know when I've failed or didn't do what I needed to do properly. But otherwise, yeah, I'll say it was, it's an audience.
When you made it look like you were editing, was that too much? Are you really editing, or do you mean to? Yeah.
That was part of the joke. I'm gonna tomorrow night. If I do that bit, I will do the exact same thing. Yeah, the whole art is to make it look spontaneous. But that part of the joke was written on stage though, not off stage. That was because I got a reaction from the audience at one point and went, oh, okay, splashing was too far, and that got such a big laugh. That when I got such similar reactions from the audience, I would just have that at the ready, and that just became part of the joke, part of the bit. But yeah, no, I knew it was coming.
The Bill Cosby bit that I do during mine, that was written on stage. I happened to say it one night, and I got a big laugh, and then I said it the next night, and it flopped. So the next night, and it flopped, and then but I asked my wife, who hadn't been to a comedy club and hadn't seen a mentalist perform when I met her. So she's very savvy. She tells me if something's, just don't do it anymore. She goes, no, it's good. People were laughed and you just got to tweak it. It took me a good 2 months to finally get to where it's at now, where it's a series of laughs from people as we go along. And it was a while, and the delivery was all wrong, but I knew something was in there and I just had to get back to it. And it's and you can't practice. Magician's the joke it's not really a joke, it's a truth, but there's a joke in there somewhere. But magicians, when they're doing card tricks, can sit, and they do, in front of their computer or on their bed in their underwear and look in the mirror so they can see their hands and just go through their card tricks and try to get really good at it so they don't have to be in front of anybody to do the trick. And then they go out into the real world to do their trick, and they're really good at doing their card trick, but they're really bad at relating to people. But we don't have that luxury. I don't, because I need, for the thought reading, I need a brain, somebody else's. And for you, you need an audience to see what kind of reaction you
That's
get.
why I think comedy is the hardest art form to do, because like how you have those like 5-year-old piano prodigy kids. They can't string a sentence together, but they can play Mozart like you've never heard before. It's because they can sit on a piano for 8 hours every single day and practice. I had an hour tonight. And that's because I've been doing this for 18 years. If I'm starting out as a new talent, I get like maybe 5 minutes a week. If I'm ambitious, then I'll try to get up to 20 to half an hour a full week. So it's a process of writing and constant having to do it. So yeah, it's a tough art to get good at.
And I asked you about the spectrum you fell into on the audience or the comedian. Whose fault is it? And I when I first started doing the hypnosis show is very scripted. It was scripted up to a point. The first 10 minutes was scripted, and then after that, it was improv. That's basically what you're doing with a group of people up here. If you ever watched Whose Line Is It Anyway, for example, people give them ideas. That's what I did. I gave them ideas. They acted it out, so I never knew how it was going to go. And so, I would still blame the audience and at first. But then I found out when I got into a theater, because I did fairs, festivals, corporate events, so it was always a different place, different audience. But when I got into the theater, and I repeatedly every night had just the same audience, or a new audience coming in, but I was the same act. And when the audience didn't react, it was the audience, I thought. But then I'm also a business consultant. And I remember telling one of my clients, and the light bulb went off, that the person that is most successful is the person that has the most flexibility. In other words, if you know how to do something multiple ways, you'll be more successful than a person that knows how to do it one way. And that's when it hit me. I said, I'm not applying that to myself. So even though the audience may be a bad audience, it's still up to me to have the flexibility to try to relate to them, and I can do the best I can. And if I walk off stage, I'll tell my wife, that was a horrible audience. And she'll say, well, yeah, it was. But then I go home and think, yeah, but there's got to be a way I could have related to them somehow.
And I think that's how you do it. And that's what I just did a gig for old Jewish people. Old Jewish people. The more narrow the demographic and audience, the harder the audience. Like if I was only dealing with, what do you call it? Only Asian women. That's a really tough crowd. You know what I mean? Because I have to connect just on their level. But the more diversity there is in a room, I can connect. People get a piece of it. So when I did the show for the older Jewish crowd, it didn't go great. And I didn't blame them. Like, they were a tough crowd, but I knew that I didn't have, 60 to 70-year-old, hello, it went over. Like I remember one of the lines was, like I said towards the end of my show, like, well, I'm going to be performing at the MGM Grand in a couple of weeks. I know that's very hard for you people to believe, but because I was doing so bad. But like I finished off going like, yeah, like there's probably a comedian better qualified for this type of crowd. I don't practice a whole lot for this type. So it's like being humble enough to always look at your work, but still knowing that there are good audiences and there are audiences that aren't so great.
Do you have, or do you see certain people as audience poison? Like we were watching Jim Gaffigan, and he's saying preachers and kids. You covered kids, but is there a certain person you see in the audience like, oh God, no, that's just not going to go good today because that person's there? Yeah, and that's your boyfriend's pointing at her. She doesn't know she's talking about herself right now. Like a drunk bachelorette party. Brutal.
Yeah. By the way, we're going to have one of those tomorrow night.
Great.
There's about 9 of them coming
Lovely.
in tomorrow night. Yes.
Wow.
Just give you a heads up.
Yeah. They're not all bad, but yeah. Or like bikers. bikers come in the room and they're already drunk. I had to handle a team of them at one point, or a pride of them. I don't know what you call it, but yeah. And they were big and just like muscles on muscles and tattoos and piercings and everything like that. And I remember being on stage. I was hosting. I was the MC that night, and I wouldn't. The middle act was a female comedian. She did not want to go on. She's supposed to do a half hour. And I wouldn't bring her on stage until they settled down. And then they finally did. And I was just painting their whole lives. Like just they're just dating their sisters. And here's what their kids look like. And this is what they talk. And I was just, I could have gotten killed that night. And the audience loved me for it because they're like, wow, like you're 10 pounds underweight, holding an air conditioner. Like you are, you know what I mean? Like you got a lot of guts, man. So, but I did. And then when she got on, they just started hooting and hollering at her, and she ended up doing like 10 minutes. And then I went back on, had to do the same thing again, brought the headliner on. At this point, they were so drunk. One of their guys was just falling all over the place that they had to pick him up. The bikers did, police themselves, because the comedy owner at the time didn't want to have anything to do with it. They're like, they do bring us business, and I don't want this kind of confrontation. So it was just staying away from it. It was just our job to do it. And then they ran out. But that's some tough targeting groups, Yeah. You be wary, and you gotta do what you gotta do.
I had a woman one night. Well, I use 22 people in my show, my longer show, and so I have a wide array. And some of them are sitting in the back, some of them are up front, and I can't see too well in the back when the lights are on in your head or in your eyes. And I called this woman up, and she comes up with a sling on, and her arms like this. And so I asked politely, I said, "Oh, did you hurt yourself? Did you fall down or something?" And she said, "No." She goes, "I got bone cancer. I'll never be able to use this arm again," which kills the show.
Yeah.
Kills the show at that point. And okay, that's nice. And I went right on with the rest of the stuff. All I could do was go over it. About a month and a half later, and my wife says I have Tourette's sometimes. I just say stuff that is on my mind, and it just comes out. But I had a guy in the front row, and I wanted to use him for a thing, but his arm was in a sling. And I asked, I said, it just came out again, and I caught myself right afterwards. I said, "Did you hurt yourself somehow here when you were on vacation?" And he said, yeah. And he told me what he did. I said, it just flew out of my mouth. "Oh, man, I'm so glad it wasn't the cancer thing again," is what I said in front of everybody. What's that?
That's funny.
I know, yeah. So have you ever done anything like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll say, because I like talking to the audience when it's sort of like an intimate one like this one. And yeah, I've had people go, "Yeah, no, I'm here tonight because I've got cancer." And I'd be like, "Oh, really? Well, thanks for bringing the show right down. Does anyone else have anything? Anyone getting their molars removed they want to tell me about?" So I'll handle it that way. I'll handle it like, "Really? That's, you couldn't, like, that's terrible. But we do have a show going on here, and you're bringing that up?"
We can play tennis with this if you want to. I called somebody from the back row up one night, and I needed her to write some things down on a piece of paper while she was up here on stage. And my face dropped as she got closer because she had a birth defect where her arms were only like that long right here coming up.
Wow.
I have so we worked with it. I handed her the pencil and I held that stuff up, but I had that. Then I also threw a wadded piece of paper out to pick a volunteer. I used that in my show one time, and I threw it out, and about 20 people, it was like I threw a hand grenade. They dove over the chairs. They screamed. A couple of them ran out the door.
Wow.
And I found out that it was a group of highly functioning autistic people. People.
Oh,
and
wow.
So that's happened before. So can you
That's
top
tough.
that?
I don't know if I can top that. But funny enough, I was on Disney Cruise, and I'm talking to a girl, and I'm just kind of going around the room, and I get to her, and I'm going, yeah, and I'm asking her a question. She won't answer back, and I go, "Are you shy?" And she goes, "Oh, are you talking to me?" I go, "I'm looking right at you." She goes, "I'm blind."
Oh.
That's very good.
On Disney.
Did you do this? Sorry.
No, I said, That's right. Yeah, should have. That would have been funny.
You might
No,
have
but I
beat me on
handled
that
it.
one.
I said, really? You tell me now? I've been making faces up here the whole time. Like, really? And then because the whole audience was like, oh, what are you gonna do? Like they got really scared and intense. So I just started talking to her, and I humanized her. Like she's not blind anymore. She's now a person who is blind. So I got to say like, what do you like? So do you have a job? Or she goes, no, I'm in school. I go, really? I go, because you seem like how old are you? You're like, I'm 27. Really? How many degrees do you have? She said, I have 3 degrees. I go, 3? That's enough. Right? I mean, now it's time to get out there and feel the world.
Well, that's the thing. Most of the time, because I found out on stage performing that they will joke around about their handicap. It's just the people out here that are uncomfortable and not them.
Absolutely. That's the biggest thing. I'm officially offended on behalf of someone who should be.
Yeah.
That's what it is. They should be offended, so I'm going to be offended on their behalf. But that I got myself right out of that situation with the blind girl, and because like I got to poke fun at her, and everyone got to see that it's all like I'm not victimizing her blindness. Even when I said it's time to get out there and feel the world, like that applies to her world, and it's there's some cleverness to it, and it's not. People allowed me to do it because of how I handled it, I guess. And yeah.
Well, I usually end every podcast with a tip for people going into the business or in the business that is not stage related. For example, I always give the tip if somebody asks me, what's one thing you could tell me that would help my career? And I tell them boldness. I said, you can use it on stage too, but really off stage, you have to be bold. And what I mean by that is you have to be confident enough and probably stupid enough to call anybody and everybody and not be afraid to talk to them, because that's how you need to get your name out there. So you call presidents of companies and let them refer you down to the person that makes the decision. And then you can say, oh, President so-and-so told me to give you a call, which he did. And I said, so you got to be on the phone. You got to be out networking. You got to be meeting people. And so that's the tip I give. Just be bold. Just walk up to people you don't know and tell them what you do and see if you can help them and they can help you. But what tip would you give to somebody?
That's a really strong one that you are giving. I mean, it depends because it's like where they're at. Like I would want to know what they're doing and then what they need to be doing that they're not doing maybe. But yeah, like because networking is huge. And then so if that's the business end of it, mm-hmm. then on the art part of it, the art side would be to keep writing as much as they possibly can, and then rewrite and write again and write until because oh god, it's just so important. It's all about the writing. The jokes are our ammunition. We don't have them, then that's like at some point if you just like Dylan, just keep going until you run out of jokes. That would happen. I only have so many. So the more jokes I have, the better it is, the stronger I get. And yeah.
Yeah, I asked my wife about the Bill Cosby joke. I said at some point it's going to live its life.
Right.
At some point. But I still haven't figured out how to work Jared from Subway into a joke. So.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah. That's the only thing that it's because it's such a dark thing. When you have to be creative, you have to be like in order to be mainstream about it. Like mine was, so does that mean that eating Subway sandwiches is the gateway to child pornography? Like, if I eat Subway, am I going to, because, people are like, if gays get married, then, then people will marry their animals. And I'm like, so if I eat Subway, right? Yeah. And I make that connection.
No, that's a really good point. I was going to wrap up the podcast, but I wanted to hit that point since you brought it up, is that I will see stuff in the news, and my wife is used to it now. When she first met me, I think she was she thought I was nuts. But even the most tragic thing in the news, I come up with a way to turn that thing around.
Yeah, that's part of the creative writing exercise. Can you make a subject that completely isn't funny? Can you find the funny in it? And that doesn't necessarily mean that you do it in front of an audience that, like this one with children, people not ready for it. Can you make that topic funny? You can try it out here. It might, this would be a tougher crowd probably for the most part. not as accepting and forgiving of it. But can you make rape funny? Because it's completely not funny.
Louis C.K. did on Saturday
Louis
Night Live.
C.K. figured it out.
Yeah.
Right. And it was still touchy.
Yeah, it was.
It's a very scary and very heavy subject. So to find the funny in it, mine was I would definitely it's the only excuse I would ever use if a girl walked in on me cheating on her. I'm getting raped right now, honey. It's not what you think. I'm being raped. And she's like, really? In doggy style position? Yes.
We were, my wife, I don't know why she watches, she's a photographer, and she watches the Next Top Model, but there's America's Next Top Model. Now she's on Australia's Next Top Model. I can't stand to watch those, but I was eating dinner tonight, and she had one on. These girls are from 14 to 21 probably, and they come up and they call out the two that are left from the group because they say, oh, you guys are going through. They pull two more up, and then one of them's going home. And I paused it. I paused the TV where she was watching Hulu, and I said, at this point, there should be some kind of wrestling or some kind of jiu-jitsu, like you said, some kind of fight. And then we descended. I said it would make this show. I would watch the show if that happens. So if people want to get a hold of you, to book you, or just contact you, what's the best way for them to do it?
I guess Facebook, really, because my website sucks.
I was going to tell you about that.
Yeah.
Did you see you're getting spammed on your blog?
And I don't know how to get rid of it.
No, I started reading them because I wanted to read on his blog. I was going through it, and
I have legitimate comments, but you got to go a mile down.
You do, yeah. But some of these are we need to transfer some money into your account. So please give it.
I don't know how to, I'm not I didn't create my own website. Someone else did, and I don't know how to get rid of all of that. So I'm probably just going to bring it down and build a new one. So I don't refer people to my website because I don't think it's very professional looking at this point.
So have you a page on Facebook or?
Dylan Mandlsohn is how to find me, and Twitter is at Dylan Comic, Dyllan, and I'm not that hard to get a hold of. And if you go to my website, there is a contact information on that. And it's DylanMandlsohn.com. Good luck spelling that world. But,
one L or two?
One L. Or funnydylan.com is also my website. Funny Dylan, just an easier name to remember.
Yes.
And
then on my site, which is BillGladwellLive.com, and then there's a link that says, Hey, Look at Me Podcast. That's the one you want to go to. And all of them's there. You can stream them online. You can download them, or you can just subscribe on Stitcher or iTunes, and they have them there. But thanks, Dylan, for sticking around and doing this. Thank you guys for doing that.
Yeah.
That was a fun time.
Yeah, thanks for, that's great.